Hey everyone. Um,
Hey.
this is welcome
Hi.
to FRG Advocacy Media.
Oh, hold on 1 second. I will take care of that right now.
No, no problem. Um, I was just introducing us, welcoming everyone to FRG Advocacy Media. I'm Mark,
I'm Crystal.
I'm
and
Michelle.
we're doing a live roundtable discussion today on purpose. Well, of course, it's on purpose, but I mean, the topic is purpose. So, welcome. I'm glad we've had a few people join us since we started the countdown. So, uh, Crystal, what should we cover next? Maybe go around do introductions.
Yes. I guess we'll start at the top with Michelle and with Reagan.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Michelle Steiner. I live in the United States. I have a learning disability, and I find a lot of purpose with working with students and helping others with disabilities.
Okay. Jay?
Hi, I'm Jay. I have 3 rare genetic conditions. I like to say I pulled the genetic short straw. Take it how you will. Uh, I find my purpose in helping families stay together. I help families prepare for and navigate Child Protective Services investigations.
Mandy?
Mindy?
um, Hi, I'm Mandy. And I have quite a few disabilities. Sorry, my brain just. Um, uh, I have post-concussive disorder, which makes it hard to comprehend some things, word find, forgetting where I am, and also fibromyalgia, as well as genetic cancer and bunch of different stuff. Um, and I like to teach other people as about the disabilities as well as coping and resilience. I'm actually an elementary teacher, but one of the things that I'm finding is that with all of the disabilities that I'm dealing with, I'm having to expand what I think my purpose is. And so it's accepting the things that I can do and working with that and teaching others as I go through that about being able to cope with that. So it's hard to put into words. Sorry.
Yeah, it's not always easy. Thanks for sharing, Mandy. Uh, Crystal, I turned off the banner in case you're wondering. We have
Oh, thank you.
yeah,
Thank you. I
I
was
noticed.
trying to figure out what to do.
Yeah, I noticed you were like slouched down, trying to avoid the banner. But Reek, who's next? Anne, why don't you go
Hi.
next?
Yes, my name's Anne, and I have Parkinson's disease. I was diagnosed 6 years ago, and I found myself taking rock steady boxing to fight my symptoms. And then 18 months after I started rock steady, I became an instructor, a certified rock steady boxing coach. All of which is kind of absurd because I was an English lit major who studied poetry and 19th century poetry, nothing less. And had no interest in or ability in anything remotely involving voluntary movement. I spent 60 years curled up in a chair with a cat and a book. And my life has changed quite a lot since then. So now I am having quite a lot of fun helping people who also have Parkinson's to fight their symptoms. And I also teach a class as part of our Rock Steady Boxing class. It's called Parkinson's Good Life, and it examines various non-motor issues that affect people with Parkinson's. And we educate the students, and they educate one another on how to cope with some of those symptoms and tame them. So
Awesome.
it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Sounds like fun.
It is.
Reagan, do you want to go next?
Hi, everybody. I'm Reagan Linton. I am a spinal cord injury survivor. I was injured 21 years ago in a car accident and I'm paralyzed from my chest down, so I'm a manual wheelchair user. I'm also an actor, director, writer, largely in theater, but also a bit in film. And so I really find my purpose and passion in creating new narratives, particularly around disability and unconventional lives, and doing away with the stale old narratives that have ruled for a long time that no longer serve us. So my passion and purpose. Good to see you all.
Good to see you, Reagan. Shai, do you want to go next?
Sure. So my name is Shai. It's an Israeli name. I born in Jerusalem in 1960. So I was spent most of my life all over the world, and about 11 years ago I had my stroke, and so I'm diagnosed with aphasia. So the businessman turned aphasia advocate is what I'm trying to do through my book, which I just published. You can find it in Amazon. A few months ago. It took me about 7 years, but to me, it's kind of like a business card or a foot in the door. Bringing awareness and sharing my story, and that's why I'm so happy to be part of this group.
Thank you for being here, Shai. And Deborah, do you want to?
Hi, everybody. I'm Deborah Vick, and like many people here, had not planned to be an advocate in the disability arena. I think that is a common thread. So I was planning for career in politics and in law, and my focus originally was in inclusion and representation of people that were in disadvantaged communities and not being represented in the legal community or in the education system. Unfortunately, my body had a very different plan in mind for me. And over the years, at age 13, just literally about a month after my bat mitzvah, destroyed my knees in track and field. And was on crutches from that day forward. But I have multiple rare diseases and autoimmune conditions, including Ehlers-Danlos, which is a connective tissue disease, series of them, and myasthenia gravis. Those are my major ones, but the myasthenia gravis means great muscular weakness. So it impacts all my muscles as well as my ability to walk. I use a wheelchair about 98% of the time. I don't know about 80, 98, but almost all the time. And I became an advocate in 93, to be honest. I started college and I obtained my electric scooter 2 days before college. And then the president of the university asked me what I wanted to change at the university to make it more accessible at SUNY Albany. I didn't know what I was doing, no idea, but I used my advocacy and volunteer skills to start that process. And everything that I needed and to put on the list for people, it was done. And that was incredibly empowering to see that. But again, still in a plan for a career in that. It wasn't until I had to fight for life-saving treatments. And I realized if I had to And I remember vividly sitting on the floor, appealing to the state of California to get my oxygen concentrator. And I had to appeal to it. And I realized in that process moment, if I had to fight that hard to get it, and I've been to law school and I have a degree in education, then how does somebody who hasn't had that training know what to do or gain that confidence to say, this is wrong and I need X, Y, and Z to survive? And that was at that moment that I
That's
really
huge. Yeah.
Yes. And even with that too, learning how to speak again, because the myasthenia impacted my ability to speak and impacted my self-confidence with speaking. I already had almost no self-confidence in my image and my appearance because of the bullying and experience that I had. And Mark and I have talked about this, and this past year has been transformational for me in seeing myself as a beautiful person, inside and out. And it was the first time I could actually do that in this wheelchair play competition. But it's that element that's really inspired me, is given that purpose. And it's that purpose of showing people we can have joy in our lives. We can have things falling around us, losing, as I lose everything, losing things, but be in pain and still find joy. And I ran into some young women at the Ability Expo this past weekend, probably half my age, maybe even more than that are just thriving. But they came up with the word disabled joy. And that's just being able to laugh at all of the ridiculousness that we go through and be present, being able to enjoy our lives alongside those challenges. I think, Amy, I think you said your couch, right? That you were curled up in a chair on a couch. I had to create a whole space in my house so that I can do that, so that I can still function from a bed or a couch or my infusion centers, whatever it is. So my purpose is showing people we can thrive alongside our disabilities and enjoy life still.
That's definitely true. Thanks for sharing, Deborah. But and we'll definitely unpack all of that and as we go through some of the questions in the discussion here. So Crystal, where should we start?
Well, I wanted to say we are so encouraged and thankful that you were all joining us, because so it is not only encouraging to us, but to the disability community in general, because being able to see so many people realize they still have purpose helps them understand they still have purpose. So we appreciate it so much. Yes.
Did Michelle, did you introduce yourself?
Yes, I did.
My apologies.
Oh, that's okay.
Everything's
Thank you for, in case, yeah.
Yes.
Thank
you. I have to say, Deborah, her story resonated with me as she was telling it. I couldn't help but smile a bit. And the reason is, and Mark, Crystal, you and I have discussed this before. We live in we've lived in a time where there is, especially with the struggle that chronic conditions can bring, it is very easy for it to consume your identity, especially because the trials and tribulations are so easy to focus on. And it's part of the human condition that we compare ourselves to others. So we tend to identify with the group. And I remember pre-diagnosis for me, I learned, there was a doctor at the Mayo Clinic, a neurologist by the name of Dr. Mark Patterson, who researches, he specializes in a very rare condition called Niemann-Pick type C. And he said something that I think is so important. And it was that not just for NPC, but for pretty much all rare diseases, most disabilities, if you don't want to have it, but if you have to, there's never been a better time in history to have it, because of just how far we've come medically, as well as the accommodations and different ways of communicating as technology has progressed that are available to us that mean that even 10, 20, 30 years ago, things that we really couldn't do, that we would have to just, essentially lie there and accept it to a certain degree, we don't anymore. I see a lot of people who actually do just accept it. And of course, depending on how debilitating something is, it determines how much you can make use of a lot of these different tools. But we live in the most exciting time, and people say, well, what makes your experience so different? And I say, not as much anymore, because there are, when you think outside the box, there's so many other things that you can do that I don't feel like I have to hold myself to a different standard as much as I do elsewhere. I see a lot of people that I think still are stuck in that mindset because it's so much of their identity. But although there is some difference, we are living in a time where the gap is not what it used to be. And that makes it so much more exciting.
Can I just follow up real quick to that? Because I'm just like sitting like nodding my head, which is probably not great for my neck pain. But I can't, even a few years ago, because of, and I'm not glad that COVID happened, but COVID opened up new doors for us. And
Yes.
I'm not joking. 3 months before we had that shutdown, I was removed from a leadership program in my previous town because of fear that I would not be able to attend the meetings. And because of my POTS, I lose consciousness on a way too frequent basis. And because of that, they removed me. I did have them do it virtually. They removed me on Zoom and told me that I would not be able to have the team connections if I use Zoom that way. And 3 months later, the whole program was on Zoom afterwards. But I was told that, or I was removed from programs because of that. We have new doors opening, right? Because we now have these networks, these communities, these spaces where we have these connections that is so valuable, that gets to share our stories, that you're right. People get to start to see us first and not our adaptive tools or whatever is happening underneath this,
Right.
underneath the skin, but underneath the surface. And I'll say too, I've had so many people now tell me they don't see me as disabled. They just see the abilities or the way that I've found unique, creative ways outside of the box thinking to make adaptability for myself. I am, because I've been in crutches, walkers, wheelchairs, power chairs, and scooters, and I don't know how many hospitals. I've seen so many different elements and changes over the past 30 years. It is really mind-boggling.
So, do you guys want to start with talking about what your personal purpose is?
Some of you touched on it when you were introducing yourself, but maybe you can elaborate if you're comfortable.
I can elaborate, but why doesn't somebody else go? Because I spent a ton of time talking.
I was gonna say the same thing.
Go ahead, Anne.
Okay. One of the things that has really surprised me has been the extent to which my flaws have been used in my purpose. I got married when I was 25. I married a wonderful engineer who was born knowing what he wanted to do with his life. And I remember we moved to Maryland, and we moved to a little old farmhouse. And I remember sitting next to a window of that farmhouse and looking out into a world where it felt like everybody had purpose except for me. What I had was a degree in English Lit and a very nice thesis on Queen Guinevere's character development in The Idols of the King. But that wasn't in the want ads. And I didn't know what I wanted to do with myself. And that was hard for me because I came from a family which was very purposeful. And I tried various things over the years. And then I finally settled into a pattern of just trying to accept the fact that there were no want ads for somebody like me. I mean, I like to do things like help people to become more themselves. That's kind of a weird thing, but that's what brought me joy. And doing some informal counseling, and I did some work in personality type theory and things like that. Then when I was diagnosed at 60, I was in a pretty decent holding pattern, and it shook me up, because I'd never been the least bit athletic. I was the kid who was chosen last for every gym team, and I think there are people who are still recovering from one particular gym experience in which we had relays in which we were supposed to dribble up to a basket, make the basket, dribble to the next basket, make that basket. I was halfway through my team. I never got even the first basket. What I did get was an anxiety attack. So I had bad associations with voluntary movement. I went off to college. I wrote a very nice paper on the making of a klutz, all about how I came to hate voluntary movement, and got an A+ on that one. And so it was actually part of my identity to not be active. And then I was shooed right into this Rocksteady boxing program after my diagnosis. The first day was awful because I felt so self-conscious, and they had sent in a film crew to do a story on our Rocksteady boxing class. So I spent the entire time trying to avoid getting on camera. I didn't understand what was going on. I was very self-conscious, and I had a lifetime of non-movement behind me. 18 months later, I had been going to Rocksteady boxing 3 times a week. Partway through, I guess it was 6 months into the program, I got my sense of smell back. It had been gone for 5 years. And I think it's because the cross-body movements, which stimulate new pathways in the brain, figured out a way to make a detour and connect up my nose and my brain again. I was partway through scooping litter boxes when that happened.
Oh, yay.
Anyway, but I remember that smell. Anyway, so I went on and became a coach, and went through the program in Indianapolis, and it was wonderful and all that. Then I came back and I felt like I couldn't find my niche, because I still was not what you would call coaching material, the bark out the orders, be straightforward. I'm more of a one-on-one person, and I'm too wordy for coaching, and too indecisive, and too this, too that. So it was not going in ways that were very good for my ego for a while. I was co-coaching with someone who was a natural coach, and she was doing beautifully, and I was always self-questioning. And then COVID happened, and our building shut down, and the other coach let go of the program because she had responsibilities at home she needed to attend to. But I still had Parkinson's, and so did our people. And so I learned how to Zoom. And for the rest of our COVID shutdown, I did Zoom classes with our students because I knew from my own experience that if we stopped moving, we would rust up. And so we kept moving. Then our building opened up again. We were able to meet back in Studio A. And the other coach came back on board, and she's tremendous. She does a wonderful job. But I started to realize that my usefulness as a coach is not because I'm decisive and know exactly, everything there is to know about boxing and athleticism and going and staying focused. No, my utility as a coach is because I have people wanting to do the program and thinking, oh, but I'm not athletic enough. And I can say, okay, did you ever get a 0 out of 25 on a field hockey skill test? Because I did. And if people are having trouble learning some of the boxing moves, I can say it took me 6 months, and I'm being honest with them. So basically, I provide an example of someone who is so non-athletic that they make everybody else feel very athletic. And I'm very, very self-questioning, and I'm prone toward anxiety attacks and all that kind of stuff. So I've learned that they are a help in the classroom because I can talk about things from my own experience that other people experience and are too ashamed to talk about.
Right.
I can talk
And
about depression and anxiety.
you mentioned impersonal counseling, but honestly, on a personal level of having, gone through my own counseling and then getting a certificate, for the disabled community, the personal counseling, they call it that, and it sounds very informal. But at the same time, when people, the normal society does not have the experiences we have, a therapist or a counselor cannot help us on so many levels. So don't disregard that. I mean, you're helping other disabled people, and not just in counseling, but through your rock buddy boxing and stuff.
Well, one of the advantages I also have, I think, in the position I've ended up with is that I have always been someone who's kind of watched out for other people. So when my mother was having health problems and going through her decline, I was very, very involved with helping her through. Did the same for my dad, and my mother-in-law actually moved in with us for a while, and then when she had to get nursing care, I went out and spent a day every week with her. So I'm aware of the toll taken in caregiving. So I not only had the perspective of somebody with Parkinson's, but I also had the perspective of someone taking care of somebody else who's getting increasingly weak. So I feel like I'm bilingual that way. And we do a lot of stuff in our group on caring for our carers, which I think is very, very important.
Awesome.
Can I just thank you though for a second? Because you were really, really authentic in sharing that. And I can still see the emotion in your face. And quite frankly, I completely resonate with you. I also was a klutz. I was like, total klutz. Discover later that it's actually one of the criteria, the diagnostic, they look at that. But that's beside the point. I have to thank you for that authenticity, because I know I struggle on social media, really being open about the not good moments. I can come on and I can have that adrenaline rush and I can go and then crash like for the next 2 days. So sharing that and us getting to see that, I think is really important, because yeah, we can put a smile on. We can, I can sometimes do my hair and what have you, but I also have hair cover. But anyway, I just have to thank you for that, because it is something I struggled with. And then just this, I'm 48 years old and I'm now able to finally be happy with where I'm at. But it's taken me until this last July to be okay with where I'm at. Even though I know I am one of those people that, except for wanting to be a rabbi until age 13, from 13 on, I wanted to be a politician and a lawyer. So I knew exactly where I wanted to be, but then my purpose completely changed when I couldn't. And that impacted my whole mental vision and emotional vision of myself. So I wanted to thank you for that. And
that's what I'm talking about. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, when you're talking about counseling from the perspective of somebody with a disability, it's also what triggered me to become a mindfulness facilitator for that same reason, because I was hearing verbiage that didn't sit well with
Right.
me being a type A native New Yorker. Just didn't work when I was hearing it. Then I couldn't imagine how anybody else who didn't grow up with that mindset would be okay with it. So that's
Right.
how I changed with my pain and my chronic, because I also have RSD, and I had to learn how to live a life with pain all the time. And how do you function with that? And how do you have a relationship? Because I am married, and my husband I met in '95 when I left New York and went out to Arizona. But I also have 2 kids. I have an almost 13-year-old, and my oldest just turned 17. And having, I don't know, I'm like, what happened? That concept of learning how do we care for our carers, and in my case, how I learned how to be okay with my kids having to help me. I mean, my kids put my shoes on, they make braces for me, they help me get out to the Uber to go to the lift to get to the train station for the Abilities Expo. But quite frankly, they do way more for me than I do for them, and I'm not always okay with that. I mean, I completely cried when I talked about it at Global Genes conference in that fall. But knowing that it's okay not to be okay. And I really wanted to highlight that, because as long as we don't stay there, as long as we don't use that to hold us back, it's okay to not be okay. It's okay. I had a meltdown the other day because I couldn't find anything all day long. And I did meditation. But, I told my son, I'm like, it's okay for me to cry. I need to let the release out. I need to get frustrated so that I can move on. And there is so much value in our struggles because we've been there. We get to show people there's a way to get to the other side. There's a way to redefine what success means. It may not look like what you thought, but you know what? In the eye of the storm, you can't see anything anyway, right? Everything looks calm and peaceful. You don't know what it's going to be like. But I kind of do believe everything happens for a reason. Obviously, I like to talk. So that's, in my case, I do believe that because I talk, because I've done writing on it, that it's a way for me to share that message, not just the disability community, but the community as a whole. Everybody has a struggle at some point in time. How do we tell people it's okay to fall? Just fall forward in a safe way and then continue to get up. I say safe because in my house, my kid's like, okay, just make sure when you pass out, you're in a space where you're not going to hurt yourself. So,
that is so true. And we are, for the most part, as a society, afraid of failure. And that is a mistake. I remember, look, with 16p13.11 microdeletion syndrome, narcolepsy, and von Willebrand disease, I try to keep it short. People, I spend so much time explaining my conditions at times. It's just easier just not to say them. I'm sure there are people here who get that. I remember I was working, and the 16p causes one of the symptoms. It causes epileptic seizures. And I remember I had a seizure. I was at my office, and my head hit the tile floor pretty hard as I was convulsing with a tonic-clonic seizure. It took a while for EMS to arrive. I was convulsing more than 10 minutes. It's not one of my prouder moments. And I was taken to the hospital. And I was always so much of I just want to feel normal. I'm just going to tough it out and everything. I signed myself out against medical advice, hopped back on the subway, and went back to my office where my supervisor was just shocked to see me. Very puzzled. Like, Jay, what are you doing here? I'm like, I'm here to finish my work day. Obviously, that wasn't going to happen, and I was going home. And so then I left, and I was heading back home, not knowing what was actually going on inside my body. All of a sudden, my head really started to hurt. And it was not a headache. This was real head pain. And that's typically a bad sign, especially if you've hit your head and just checked yourself out of the hospital. I was not going to make it home on my own. So my father, who also worked in New York City, I said, meet me. I can't make it home myself. I didn't make it out of the Bronx in New York. I was back in another hospital until they got me on morphine. They couldn't get me to sit still. I was in absolute agony. I had no idea what my purpose was at the time, but at that point, I just wanted to be out of pain. I didn't really care about my purpose. It really hurt. It turns out when they could finally get me to sit still on the CT scanner, the doctor comes in, the radiologist comes in after reviewing the images. All I have to hear are the words acute subdural hematoma, and I know that I may have just made my last decision. I knew that there was a 50 to 90% chance I was not walking out of that hospital breathing, alive. Clearly there was going to be some form of damage at best. But thankfully I've been preparing for death since my early teens. So it wasn't so bad. By some miracle, I did manage to survive almost unscathed, even after checking myself out of the hospital and trying to finish my workday with a bleed in my brain. Fast forward, I went to work in child welfare after that. And I found that, and for those of you that do receive government services, you will understand how terrible the government is at doing things most of the time. Starting with how tedious it is to just even get it when it works. And unfortunately for child welfare, that same culture exists, and it results in a lot of families being unnecessarily separated, kids adopted out, severe consequences to the freedom of families to raise their kids. And I'll tell you right now, when it comes to those to parents with disabilities, whether it's intellectual, whether it's mental, whether it is physical, these are major issues, and the child welfare system does not treat parents with disabilities particularly well. They are typically, they do rush to act. And so, even with, when your kids are helping you, for me, I do always worry about that, because I imagine, I don't have kids yet. It's on the books. It will happen. Make no mistake about it. But the whole point is, I know that if I'm, if I'm thinking like I used to as a CPS investigator, now I started a consulting firm helping families prepare for and navigate these investigations. But, if I'm thinking like that, and I know someone has epileptic seizures, and I see, oh no, you missed a day of medication, what happens if somebody else is not there and your 5-year-old is unsupervised? Well, then that's a safety concern, and we might have to remove the kids if you don't have that redundancy, because unfortunately, with the liability first culture, the parents are held to a standard that is what I would call very close to perfection. So I will say that when people talk about their experience and the difficulties that they've faced, whether it's disability or it's just a financial issue, everybody's got, what I found is everybody's got something. They just don't usually talk about it, and it's not always visible. But at the end of the day, the experiences that we have, the adversities that we face, shape us, and they shape how we think about things. Sometimes that's an advantage, sometimes it's not. But here, this is something that I always keep in mind with every client I work with. And make no mistake about it, without my prior experience, that wouldn't be the case. But and I'll finish. I'll finish my segment with this. Going back to the subdural hematoma, not that I recommend that anybody do this to increase their gratitude for the world, but having that in my mid-20s meant that I spent a lot of years not complaining every time I lost my cell phone or my wallet, because they were just material things. You learn very quickly what is important in life rather than waiting till your midlife crisis. So no, don't. I can't emphasize this enough. Do not go out and knock your head around until you have a subdural hematoma, so you understand what's important in life and you have this life-changing experience. Don't be dumb. But there are some advantages that come with this. That come with our experiences.
Oh, okay, that is just hilarious. No, I have to say I resonate with the near-death stuff because I've done it myself more than once. I would just put it that way. And I also live a life through gratitude. So but I still get upset when I lose my phone. So I gotta say that. But and I was away one semester away at the last of my end of my first semester. I was apparently 4 hours from not being here today. And I'm like, I need to get out of here from my law school. And like, you ain't going anywhere like a week, girl. But anyway, I want to highlight something you said though. Custody and children. And people with disabilities. Because I was just having this conversation with a fellow advocate yesterday of how many kids are removed because of either their own disability and the doctors not understanding their invisible disability, like RSD. There was a couple articles of families of children that were taken away out of their homes for that, and a really sad one of a mother who took her own life so that her daughter can be released from a medical system. And yet, with like Ehlers-Danlos, you can't see it. And I wasn't diagnosed until I was 25. I bruised all over the place. I twisted, broken things, dislocated things, and it's very common. And kids are taken away because they assume that they're harming the child instead of believing that there is something they cannot see that is causing these problems. Or the opposite of women and families who have a system set up and cannot adopt children because the system is judging them pre-parenting that because they have a disability, they can't be a parent or a foster parent. So I love what you're doing because there is so much value in it. My kids were a miracle. I was supposed to get pregnant, and I am so blessed with that. But I have seen so many people struggle, either prior to adopting or after kids. I think it's so important to have somebody who understands this to be the leader in this element. So thank you.
Absolutely, it's so important. And Ehlers-Danlos, in a child is even harder because that is a major medical mimic of child abuse. They see marks and somebody sees marks and bruises. They don't understand Ehlers-Danlos. Well, that's a problem in and of itself. I remember, I started CPS Protect Consulting Services last year, and right before 5 days before that, 5 days before, no, it's 4 days before launch. I had brain surgery because I had an implant of a responsive neurostimulator in my head. I knew this was coming because the meds just weren't working. So unfortunately, if I wanted to change the status quo, I was going to have to let them, stick something in my brain. And I was like, I want to get this off the ground, and it shouldn't take long to recover. So I have the surgery on a Thursday. I get out on a Friday. And I launch on a Monday. I was so overconfident, that I was almost neglecting myself. Sometimes we think that we can deal with more than we can. I hadn't had night terrors since I was a kid. I had 3 night terrors in a row, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. My head was still hurting. I didn't actually realize that. So if you're going to launch, a business or some sort of volunteer venture or, or advocacy thing, wait at least a week until after you've had brain surgery. Wait at least, because
or any surgery.
Personal experience in this, it does not go particularly well. So wait at least a week after getting out for brain surgery. And yes, when I talk about brain surgery, people think that it is, because you're dealing with the brain, that it's a big deal. But the truth is, there wasn't much risk to it. The rate of adverse events was maybe 2%. And I'll never forget what the person, the office coordinator told me before the surgery. And she said, it's not like it's open back surgery. It's just brain surgery. And it was so true. If open back surgery was magnitudes riskier, this was no big deal. Yes, it was brain surgery, and it was absolutely no big deal. Yes, it sounds shocking, but it's so shocking because it really is statistically true, and it helps you put things into perspective. So as far as how bad things can get, sometimes it's important to get away from the emotion for a second and actually look at how silly it can be based on what we value. Yes, the brain is more important, but was this really likely to kill me? No.
I'm just laughing so hard right now because I have a port, Medtronic pump, and a whole host of spinal surgeries. I cried getting my port out and putting it in. Meanwhile, my husband's like, "You are used from C2 down to T2, and you were crying about that." So I'm gonna be quiet because we have a lot of people haven't spoken. So
Thanks for sharing, G. Does anyone else want to talk about their purpose?
I think part of my purpose comes from having a learning disability and knowing when I was in school that it was so difficult to not have somebody to relate to that I worked with in school. I either had teachers that, because they couldn't see my disability, thought I could do anything. And I had other ones who thought, well, you have this disability, so we don't know if you can go to college. And I've had a lot of people limit me. And I find it such a blessing to work in the school as a teacher's aide. And I get to go back and I'll have students tell me, I don't want to have a disability. I don't want an individual education plan. And I get to tell them it's okay to have one. And I go in and we go through the steps on how we advocate. And I have a kid that might come in really scared. And by the time we talk about it, they come out with confidence with that. And I also found a purpose with my writing, with talking about it. For so many years, I just wanted to hide, like, oh, I don't have anything wrong. And my friend told me, you really should write about having a disability. And I said, oh, I don't know if that's a great idea. And when I got that first article published, I can just remember I wasn't scared. I had a lot of acceptance from other people, and that confidence just grew out of it.
Thank you for sharing that. Oh, goodness, there's so many. How about you, Mandy? You teach us as well.
Yeah. So my disabilities didn't start until after I had started college, and so all of a sudden, when I was walking to and from class, I started having issues with my leg, and then in the middle of class, I was having issues with being able to see. My vision would blur, and eyes would start shaking, which it's like, what in the world is going on? And then I started passing out in classes, and actually was going to a final and made it to the classroom, and one of my friends noticed something was a little off, and there's like, what's wrong, what just happened? And I'm like, oh, I just passed out, it's nothing, it's no big deal, I was out for like 3 minutes, it's okay. And and she actually got the attention of the professor, and the professor walked me to the health center in the university, putting on hold this final to walk me personally there because I wouldn't take care of it myself. I was determined I was going to take this final no matter what. And so I've resonated so much with multiples of these stories so far because I am incredibly stubborn regarding ignoring my own issues and moving on and getting the things done that I need to get done or perceive that I need to get done. And so I pushed through even though I was in a walking cast and nobody knew why. And I was actually having diabetic issues, which is what was causing the passing out. And we still hadn't figured that out for another couple of years. So I continued on going to school to become a teacher while that was going on. In my last year of school, I was in my first PE and health methods class. We were playing freeze tag. The teacher said, you have to do as much as you possibly can. And so I forced myself and I sprinted across the gym floor. And that decision, 5 seconds, and I am partially paralyzed in my right leg. And I tore all 4 ligaments in my knee, and halfway through the meniscus, I was immediately in a wheelchair, couldn't feel my foot, couldn't move it at all. And so then I go to school 2 days later because they told me that they were going to drop me out of my program. And the professor, different professor, pulled me aside and said, "You're in a wheelchair. You're not going to be able to teach." And I was so confused. I'm like, what in the world does a chair have to do with being able to teach? And she said, schools just won't accommodate you. They are going to put you to the side. They're going to shelf you. They won't hire you. Yeah, they'd have these things about, we're equal opportunity employers and all of this, but they will instantly look at you and say, no, we don't want to deal with that. And I, again, stubborn. I'm like, no, I'll find somebody that's going to do this. I'm going to make it through. Made it through with straight A's on full,
Awesome.
pain medications and everything. My dad driving me everywhere because I was annoying and I couldn't drive, and people had to do for me. And the same thing with the kids. My son's almost 15, my daughter's 17 now. And here they were at the time, 6 and 8, and they're helping me dress. They're helping me get in and out of the shower. They're getting me food, and I'm getting emotional, and I'm not going to say that anymore. And so,
I get it.
so, my children, my elementary children, were helping me write my papers. And it's extremely humbling to realize that not only that I needed the help to get through, but that my elementary age children that are in second and or first and third grade were able to write college papers. And so then that made me incorporate that into my teaching, and realizing that children are so much smarter than people give them credit for. They're so much more capable than adults let them be. And so I made it through the whole program. I'm an actual teacher, and I was only able to teach for 3 years before the cancer set in, and I was having so many surgeries for that and for my leg, that because the surgery was botched, it's great. That I needed to take time off. And then I was in a motorhome wreck, and I had post-concussive disorder, and couldn't think, couldn't see, all that good stuff. So sorry, I'm trying to speed through this because it's so much. But in that, knowing at that time when I very first started, I had already started talking to kids about, you can publish books. And I actually went through with them how I actually worked with my kids to publish their own books at the age of 9. And they use their books to teach other kids in their classes and their schools about how they are capable of being an author that early in life. They are capable of going through and then writing their little stories, expanding upon them, and having these amazing things that they have created. Same with art, same with so many other things. And it's just a matter of having the people to work with you and having a few tools to get you there. And I have had so many students come up to me. My first ones are seniors, so that's a little humbling. But anyways, they've come up to me and have told me how this has inspired them so much to continue on with things that other people doubted them about, that they felt that they couldn't do, and to be able to see that their ability or inability to do something at the moment doesn't mean that they won't be able to do it eventually. And so I found that even though there are stopping points in my life, that I can always go somewhere. I can always do something. And there are times that I get so very down on myself because I can't really teach anymore. I can't teach more than 2 days at a time because my brain literally overloads and I can't concentrate and I can't put my sentences together and I can't answer questions. And this I can talk about for a prolonged period of time because I've done it so much. And it's hard for people to understand how I can be so put together and have written all these books in my past and have intellectual conversations at moments and then all of a sudden fall apart. It's like, are you acting? What's going on? And trying to, I found one of my purposes is trying to be open about me, about the different things that I'm going through, to allow people to see the unseen. Because if I just existed as my stubborn self that's pushing through everything, people are going to see that strong and resilient person that I've built myself to be professionally, so that I'll be taken seriously in a job of some sort. And they won't see all the things that I have to overcome to be able to do the things from moment to moment. And it took me forever to own the word disabled. Forever. Didn't do it until this last July. Exactly, July. You were talking about that. And
Hey, Mom.
I've been disabled since 2015. So it's, yes, definitely, Jay. The recent advances create so many possibilities, so many tools that were given, and we shouldn't be embarrassed about using them. We shouldn't have to hide them. And to feel like that is something that when I go into a classroom and teachers are saying, no, you need to have your cane over here, or no, you need to have this wiggle pad over here because your tailbone doesn't feel good in the chair, or, why can we not work with that? Why can we not? And I mean, we as teachers, as the people that are these children's advocates, why can we not look at them and see there's something behind the behaviors? There's some reason behind, everything that they do. And anyways, I'm rattling on. But
can you just say one thing again? Go back to something you just said, because I want to just pedal back for a second, and I know this is your show, but I want to pedal back to a word that you said. I'll give you a moment because I know this is emotional. I can feel it because I'm there with you. So you are a kindred spirit here. But you said you own the word disabled.
Yeah.
Now I wasn't given that label until college orientation. Actually, my brother's house. I was at Bass Over Seder, and I completely melted down. Even though I was on crutches for 7 years already, I couldn't. That word it was a trigger for me. And as a teacher, as an educator myself, and as a scout leader, and working on merit badges with disability awareness, I'm trying to teach people to own the word. A word has power.
Mm-hmm.
We can let it take it down and tear us apart, or we can own it. And when I write disabled or disability, I capitalize abilities and I capitalize abled, because we may not be able to do some things, but we are, everyone, I'm here creative, I'm figuring outside the box, we're figuring it out, and we're coming up with other ways, and it's becoming our superpower and not our negative side. And I just really wanted you to highlight that statement because it took me, let's just say, over 30 years to get to that point. And it's so invaluable to know that. So
it's something I still hide sometimes because of that. You know,
yeah.
I mean, it's very recent. It's something I have to get over every day. And you know, the disability placard in the car, you almost feel like you have to look more disabled when you get out of the car so people don't feel like you're inconveniencing them by being in the spot. And or using the electric wheelchairs in the stores and things like that. Do I look enough disabled enough today? It's like, why do I care about But yeah, anyway, some of you wanted to talk, so I'm letting.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. But Crystal, I believe you wanted to add some.
Yeah, I was going to ask Shai and Michelle. I mean Reagan too. But with something I wanted to also mention, you were saying stuff about, you know, if the normal society says put your device over here, do this over here, that's taking away from what we're able to do, showing our purpose of what we can do, because we're too focused on making them comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, they need to just stop.
Yeah.
You know? I'm sorry. Go ahead, Chai.
Me?
Mm-hmm.
Well, first of all, just listening to the, you know, everybody's you know, it's warmed my heart. You know, I just have aphasia. I'm just humbled and
you can adjust.
you know, when it comes to I mean, you know, when it comes to purposes, I think the answer kind of is like, well, depends, or you're like, what do you mean is? You know, it's more like, what are the purposes? You know, and I have a few of them, but obviously, the you know what happened with the stroke, and when your life has changed, you know, drastically. Yeah, you know, I think I think part of it is I'm not sure I found a purpose. I'm not sure. Maybe it stumbled kind of, and I found it. I mean, it founded me. You know, aphasia found me in a way. But
Yes.
you know, I made a choice. Obviously, I've taken on advocacy. You know, but you know, I was always kind of step back in a way and trying to really go much deeper into myself. I think I'm looking at the half full glass of what happened in my life was, you know, I kind of like the better man I am and not the man I used to be. Not that I was a bad, you know, guy or anything like that. But I was too busy, like the John Lennon song or something. You're busy with other things, and when life happens to you, and and when you really, it was really interesting how, the word loss, and what happened to the friends he used to have, what happened to my career, what happened to my languages, that I had, what happened to my dignity, and it took a long time for me. I went in pure hell when it comes to isolation, my anger, my hopelessness, the gloom, I didn't particularly like me at that time. And, at I've embarked on a journey, and this is and luckily I was shown the light, and obviously this is obviously part of the book, but the book is what I am, when it comes to my aphasia. It's my companion, and this is what I invented into it, because it's a mirror of what I am right now. I don't know if I explain very good, but I invented this into my life. I talk to myself, right? So who are I talking to? Well, and there's dialogue happening, but the biggest thing, I think, the three things that happened for me was recovery, discovery, and of course transformation. It came in. What's interesting about our conversations here, and I look at all of us we have recovery, physically and perhaps mentally also.
Right.
The cool thing is about the discovery. I discovered things that, really surprised me. Aphasia came into my life. Yes, I was definitely surprised, but I really, to being, surprised at myself. Oh my God, did I really do that? What how did humility came into my life? So I think it's the transformation part of it was coming back to the roots, to the things that the passions that I wanted to have. I wanted to cook. I wanted my music, which I also the languages, which is now, and it's a different uphill battle, but unfortunately I have so much time on my hands. Well, let's really get back and do the things that you really like. So, it's an arduous journey, no question about it. It's a living with this aphasia, with our disability. For all of us is. I wrote a poem. One of them is in the book also. When I saw that one of the people here who are about poetry, and so all I can say is, when it comes to the purpose, I think it's there's no final destination here on the purpose. It's an ongoing, and with good and bad, with all of we all have our scratches, right, in the vinyl records in our head, but that's all I have to say for now.
Thank you for sharing that, Chai. I just wanted to address one thing.
You forgot Reagan.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead. Sorry, Reagan.
No, that's okay. Did you want to finish? Was it?
Well, I just wanted to let people know that they may have noticed people from the first group leaving. We wanted to welcome Jennifer and John, and now Kevin, who are joining us. Sorry, go ahead, Reagan.
No, that's fine. Thanks for contextualizing for us. Yeah, well, and I, part of my purpose as a a writer and artist is to try to take big thoughts and distill them down to simple things and be brief. So I'll try to do that. But yeah, I mean, I think, Shai, I really appreciate what you said about changing, because I think sometimes we have this idea that purpose is, that there's one solid purpose out there that we have to find and we have to figure out. And I think that was something I struggled with a lot as a young person before my disability was, because I'm a Libra. And so I shift a lot, and and I had a lot of different interests and went through 5 majors in college. And, so, and finally, I think after I was injured, I realized, oh, right, purpose is also malleable, just like our bodies are, just like our lives are. I think that's, to one of the other questions you posed, what has your disability given you? It's that flexibility, that adaptability to say, my purpose as an 18-year-old on 2 legs was very different from my purpose as a 41-year-old wheeling through the world, and that's okay. And that I kind of also, as a Libra, I kind of strive for balance, and some of the balance and purpose for me is the balance between like micro purpose and macro purpose. And I have my days where like my purpose is just getting myself out of bed and getting through my bathroom stuff and like, just taking the baby steps that I can do to like get through my day. And then I have other days where I want to do epic shit, so trying to kind of keep all of that in the mix. And the final thing I'll say is just that, sometimes, again, because some other folks were talking about being honest about, the things we deal with while also maintaining hope and optimism. And I think some days, when I'm having my harder days, I do think about the purpose of others, right? And that balance of self with others and community, and particularly others who came before me and were very purposeful. And there was also conversation about all the things that, we have access to that people didn't before. And that's because of people who purposely worked for that change. And so I think when I'm having my hardest days, I just think about carrying on their legacy, for who maybe know or don't, like Judy Heumann, who is a really amazing disability rights advocate who just passed away, and just thinking of all the things she did and people like her to get me to where I am. And so I try to channel that same energy in not just doing for myself, but doing for everybody else. And sometimes that gives me the goodness.
We were talking with the guest yesterday and talking about Judy Newman, and how amazing it must be for her to be looking down at all of us, and seeing the collective fight that we're carrying on for her, maybe not doing at, the same, at that same level. But, it's more than just a couple people that are trying to move forward. It's got to be incredible. And, I'm, as I said in the beginning, it's incredible for Mark and I to be able to see, all these people that the disability community here coming together and talking about their purpose. You're helping other disabled people realize that, yes, they've been stuck, and society has held them down, and they haven't been able to shine and show their own purpose. So we thank you guys again so much.
Thank you.
And my apologies, I'm going to have to jump off, but this was lovely. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us.
Yes, me too. And thank you. Many, many, many thanks.
Thank you, Shai.
Thank you, Shai.
Thank you.
So,
Jason or Jen, Jason?
You mean John?
Oh, sorry.
Jennifer, John, Kevin, we're talking about purpose right now. So do you want to maybe address or talk about what your purpose?
Question do you want now?
Well, I guess we can kind of blend this one with the second one because they haven't
Okay.
been able to, which was, so it's we're talking about what is their purpose and how do you remain focused on it? Maybe you could speak to that.
Can you see me?
No, we
No,
can't,
no, we
Kevin.
cannot, Kevin.
I don't know how to fix that.
Um. Oh, yeah. You just kind of.
You did something, and we saw your icon,
Well,
your
we see
A.
your. Yeah.
Let me try to fix it. I'll be back.
Okay.
1 second.
Okay,
Okay.
sure.
Jennifer or John,
Sure.
if you want to speak about that.
Sure. So, what is my purpose and how do I remain focused on it?
Yeah.
Oh, and like, when I jumped on, as the first group was leaving, and man, I was literally taking notes because some of these things just hit home.
Uh-huh.
It really started to make me think even
No.
about my responses here, because my purpose, I think, in that, as she was talking about kind of the macro versus like the micro purposes, I really like that concept.
Yeah.
Because I think ultimately, as someone told me years ago, I was in a professional training and they said, "You're an educator." Now, I was a professional body worker, and actually the majority of my work as such was education. And then becoming a yoga instructor. And again, it's like educating, and then writing a book about traumatic brain injury and being an advocate for TBI folks. I realized, like, yeah, my purpose really is educating others, educating and empowering others. How that is done might vary. What the topic is might vary. But it seems like that is, for me, like one thing that kind of drives me is like, I love to be able to share things with others, whatever the topic is, but especially in regards to traumatic brain injury and all of the countless repercussions that I know I've experienced and that others do as well, is to help them know that they're not alone. That is such a huge thing. And then, of course, to offer information and support as wanted. And honestly, like, in the last couple of years since I became legally disabled and had to close my practice and end my career, I really struggled with, like, what am I here for? Like, what am I doing? Because I can't do my work anymore, which I thought was my purpose. And I really had to sit with that and reflect and go, like, no, I still have a purpose. It just might look differently in application. So there are days where, like, is it Reagan is her name? I was just sharing of, like, there are days where I just get through the day by just taking care of myself, and like that's what I can do.
But that was Michelle, right? I forget which one. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but sometimes it's like I can only just focus on getting through the day, taking care of myself, and then the next day, that I'm like, all right, I'm gonna create content and put it out there to help other people. But especially when I get to be a part of, there's a brain injury support group I attend, and when people are asking for advice or needing resources, and if there's something that I have to offer that can help them, that keeps me coming back to seeing where there's a need. I think seeing always where there's a need and going, okay, there's work that needs to be done, and what part of that can I play? So it's that constant reminder of, like, I know I didn't have a lot of resources. I didn't know what to do. Still sometimes don't know what to do as I continue to get diagnoses even 9 years later. And so I know that if there's something that I have learned, then I need to share it because it's likely going to happen or happening for someone else. So that kind of keeps me going too. It's like the more I discover, there's that, as you said, like the recovery and then discovery. continually sharing that, because I know other people need it as much as I knew I would have needed it, especially early on.
Thank you, Jennifer. John or Kevin?
Hey, you can see me
Yes,
now, I
we
think.
can see
Yeah,
now.
we can see you now.
Thank you.
Kevin, would you like me to proceed, or are you ready?
I can go, I guess.
Okay, go ahead.
Sorry, late. I have Lewy body dementia.
Mhm.
Remaining focused is hard with Lewy body. There are days where I don't feel like it anymore, but I know that my reality with Lewy body dementia is different than the reality of someone who does not have a dementia related disease or someone with a disability. But I know that our realities can coexist if I continue to advocate for our reality with others. And when I don't, I know there are people suffering with dementia related diseases whose voices aren't being heard. And so it helps me to remain focused.
And do you want to tell us a bit of, you do you put on a 5K that you do, right?
Yeah, we did that last year. And my friend Jay Allen, who was on The Voice, I grew up with his mom. He came to help me. And in a couple of months is my second annual golf tournament for dementia. So we'll do that. And then speaking to the Iowa legislature on making Iowa a more welcoming state for those living with dementia related diseases is kind of what I'm working on now. The project we're working on to bring some of our notable people from Iowa who's gone on into film to come back and help me. So we'll see.
Yeah, that's awesome. Being able to show your purpose through helping others feel welcome.
Well, it's pretty well known in Iowa because of my job. And I figured since I still have that ability where people remember me, I should use it. Eventually, they'll stop picking up the phone. So, but
And, that is so important. Being, just because you have new abilities, and maybe they look a lot different than they did, or,
yeah,
what society thinks they should look like, whatever, it doesn't mean they're not there. You just have to readapt. You have to adapt to them and get good at them. Just because they look different doesn't mean that you just give up. Doesn't
right.
mean.
I'm still Kevin. I just my brain's a little slower now, but I'm still me.
Right.
I still have the same heart, the same passion and compassion. It's still me.
Right.
It's just a different version, but a lot of times it's a better version. So just trying to create that narrative in Iowa, not just for me with people with dementia, but being a veteran, veterans with disabilities, in all people. It's still us.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, Kevin.
Sure. Yeah.
John, do you want to connect?
Absolutely. Well, thank you for having me here. Certainly identify with a lot of the testimonies that have been shared to this point. I think there's definitely a commonality of experience when we're all enduring some change in our life circumstance. My disability is one that was acquired via a car accident, so something totally unexpected that came into my life, as is the case, of course, for many people. And I was a 23-year-old school teacher at the time, fresh out of university, and I certainly had a lot of dreams. I think my purpose at that time, other than serving my students and connecting them with future opportunity, was somewhat selfish. I was a young guy. I had dreams for my own life, and that is what I was trying to orient myself towards achieving. Now, though, I think it's very different in that, I think at first, after the car accident, my purpose was proving the raw assessment of my future potential wrong. It's quite depressing what I was told in the days and weeks after that accident. One of my longtime passions had been traveling, and I was a very frequent traveler in my personal time. And I was told that I would probably never travel again. And so there was a certain interest that I had in proving that to be a fallacy. Now, today, I run what is certainly one of the largest accessible travel websites, and I'm traveling all of the time as a triple amputee and wheelchair user. And so, I certainly achieved that, finding the confidence to prove the doctors and therapists wrong. But in that process of traveling with a disability and encountering others in the community, I discovered a new purpose. And I think that is something that, if we lead a good life and one that is open to new opportunity and one in which we're trying to truly understand the world around us and be observant of the things that are going on in our society, human perspectives and on their purpose can certainly change. And others have said that they consider their own purpose to be malleable, or they have a variety of purposes. And I certainly identify with that. I think that, in building my website, my focus has been to promote independence among people who are like me in the disability community, promoting independence, helping people to seize new opportunities, to prove those around them wrong, who have had a harmful, limited view on their own possibility. And so I think that possibility in this world is truly boundless. I'm grateful that I became disabled in this era rather than a century or two ago. My power wheelchair is a critical aid to my opportunity and achieving independence in my own life. But yeah, my purpose is certainly focused on helping people become independent and to have the freedom to exercise their own desires, to fulfill their dreams and live them out. And that is that sounds great. I'm doing something nice for the community, but also it's a selfish desire as well, because everything that I advocate for certainly benefits me as a disabled person, and I don't think that there's any shame to be found in that. Um, I think that what we need to do is level the playing field and create equity in the world in which we live, and whether that is traveling to a faraway destination, going to see the Eiffel Tower or the Great Wall of China, or whether it's promoting access within our own communities. I've said for a long time that I think that accessible travel, the start of that is in a local journey. We engage with our local communities first, and by advocating in the places where we live for greater access, we benefit not only ourselves and those who live in our communities, um, but also the people who might want to travel to our communities, because the place where we live is a destination for someone else. And so I think it's very important, for me and for others in the community, the people who subscribe and read my website, to be active in their advocacy. And so that is something that really has allowed me to remain focused, recognizing that there really is never-ending work here. And the impact of that work is something that touches not only me and you, but millions upon millions of other people who exist in similar communities around the world, and who all have dreams. I thought for a long time after my car accident, some shame. My body was different. I looked different. My some of the things that I could do before, I could no longer achieve easily. Um, and I truly recognized in reflecting on that an individual's value has nothing to do with outward appearance or physical ability, um, but our value comes from our dreams and desires, the way that we perceive the world, the relationships that we have with others.
Right.
And so I want to help people and myself continue, to fulfill our maximum potential in the circumstances that we've been dealt. And I think that at the core of our potential, we're all capable of the most important things in life, and that is love and friendship and agency and advocating for what is good, within our small communities of friends and family, but also in the world as a whole. And so
Right.
that's what I'm focused on.
Mm. That was excellent. Thank you so much. Want to the next question?
Sure.
Um,
It was no, it was the yeah, okay.
It's the only one we haven't done yet.
Right. So maybe each of you can address this. What about your disability enables you to fulfill this purpose more than someone who doesn't have your disability or isn't disabled?
I can start that if
Okay.
you want.
Go.
It's one thing to live this every day, to have this lived experience that you don't get to take a break from. That with this lived experience, like I know the struggles, the challenges, as well as the gifts and the joys and the accomplishments that go with it, with all of my diagnoses. And that lived experience cannot be understood by reading published journal articles, even by reading any of the content that any of us put out. For someone who doesn't have our experiences with our conditions, or specific things like that. Not even medical providers who treat or help us to manage whatever diagnoses that we have, or disabilities that we have. They might know a lot of stuff, very educated, but they don't know the lived experience. And that ability to connect with other people with that shared experience in some way is really powerful and priceless, really. And so I think when it comes to doing the things that all of us are doing, and oh my gosh, everyone here is doing just absolutely amazing things. But that lived experience is something that you can't find anywhere else. Just like with anything, you can't talk about travel if you haven't gone anywhere. But I think that makes the purpose that much more powerful, in my opinion.
Exactly. We were talking about that in the first group, and Mark and I as well were talking before this, and I use that same terminology, the lived experiences that we all have as individual disabilities, and my personal disability has afforded me being able to, through those lived experiences, while they were difficult and maybe I didn't understand what was going on at the time, certainly those things have instilled in me being able to talk to others and help them through their own struggles. And that is something of major purpose for me. So.
Kevin, do you want to?
Well, I don't know the lady's name that spoke. I'm sorry.
Crystal? Which one?
The other woman.
Jennifer.
Just Jennifer said everything I would say. I think for me right now, for my purpose is I speak to the Alzheimer's Association and the Lewy Body Dementia Association and tell them, listen, I appreciate you going up to the mountaintop to fight for me, but just remember at times you need to come down into the valley and spend time with people like me so that you're up on the mountaintop fighting and screaming for the right things. And sometimes they get lost in that because they forget to come down into the valley with us because they're on the mountaintop way too long. And so that's what makes us a different than someone who isn't experiencing whatever disability you may have. So that's my talking point with them. I have a lot. A lot of times people with my type of disability are called on to tell their story so organizations can make a name for themselves or generate funds for themselves, and then they leave people like me off into the corner because they've used what they needed from us. And then I have to remind them, listen, like I said, when you're up on the mountaintop and you're fighting for funds and money, and you need to come back down into the valley and spend time with us. Because maybe the narrative has changed over time and there's something else that you need to fight for us with. We have to do it together because people with dementia-related diseases, we tend to die early because of a failure to thrive. And we want to still be a part of community and want to do what we can. But when you're leaving us in the corner, well, then we feel no purpose. So come back down into the valley and pick us up and take us to the mountaintop with you, and hand in hand, we can make it a better place for all of us living with dementia-related diseases or any type of disability. It's just a thought I have.
Yeah, that's a very valuable point there, Kevin. Certainly, I'm sure all of us have seen that or experienced that to some degree.
For sure. So many people have taken advantage of sharing our story and putting their narrative on our story to help their charity, whatever, some, not all of them, some of them. And, it's, it's just the case of they need to stop, and we have the ability to share our own story, and they can stop.
Okay. I think it has a lot to do with the general narrative that's spread in society. I mean, they have good intentions to one would hope, but they still have in their own minds that people with disabilities aren't at the same level they are. And
Right. Well, you
how,
have to remember that's all they know. That's what they were taught, generational. That's what they were taught. So this is how they think they need to treat people with disabilities now, because that's all they know. And we just have to change that narrative. I mean, disability is not what you think it is unless you spend time with us and see what we're capable of, and give us a voice. Be quiet so we can speak. Stop speaking for us. Then you'll not be in the way.
that's certainly a lot of what we try to do with the M4G. And see media spread that message and educate, empower, encourage people. So, Crystal, is there anything
No, this was so awesome. You guys and the group before shared some very, very helpful and encouraging things for the disability community and for anybody else that might be rewatching it. Thank you as well, because I hope you're able to pull from this and be able to make your own purpose.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care. Thanks so much.